And Yitzchak prayed to Yehovah for his wife because she was barren, and Yehovah answered his prayer. Rivka, his wife, conceived. Not what it says, okay? It says that Yitzchak atard Yehovah. It doesn't say that he answered his atar. Yehovah answered his prayer. This answered his prayer is all one word. It's atar. Because when you've got a verb, you can either have a verb that somebody is doing, which is what Yitzchak is doing, or you can have a verb that somebody responds to in some kind of way. So what it actually says literally is, Yitzchak atard Yehovah, and Yehovah was atard of Yitzchak. Not answering his prayer. It doesn't say that he answered this prayer. He did answer his prayer, but that's not what this says. So what does the word atar mean? Important for us to understand, because we read just in the English and we say, oh, so we prayed to him. We know what praying is. Is that what he did though? Okay, so we've got the word atar. It's a verb, so it's something that you do. To pray, entreat, or supplicate. And the only reason the word praise there is because that's how we understand it in the English. What he actually did is he entreated Yehovah. He went to him with a specific request about something, about his wife, and he entreated Yehovah to fulfill his request. And it says that Yehovah was entreated of him, and so did fulfill his request. Judges 13, 8-9, we see this word. And Manoach prayed, he atard Yehovah. He made an entreaty to him, and he said, oh, Yehovah, please let the man of Elohim whom you sent come to us again and teach us what to do for the youth who is to be born. And Elohim shemad the voice of Noach, and the angel of Elohim came to the woman again. Okay, so he made a specific entreaty to him about a specific thing. Exodus 8, verse 8. Pharaoh then called for Moshe and Aharon and said, Atar Yehovah, to take the frogs away from me. He didn't say, go and pray to Yehovah and just ask him. He says, make an entreaty on my behalf. And that's exactly what he did. Moshe went out from Pharaoh and atar'd Yehovah. So we fasted and prayed. Different word here. This word is bakash, to our Elohim for this. And he answered our atar. He answered our treaty. So when they were bakashing Elohim, what form that took is the form of an entreaty. So what is it to bakash Yehovah? It's the word bakash, and it's another verb, something you do, and it's to seek, require, desire, exact, request. Not all of those things are what you will be doing to Yehovah. The word can be used in its plain meaning of the word as well. Okay, to seek, you don't require anything of Yehovah. You don't say, I required this of Yehovah. Okay, to desire, okay, kind of close to. Notice this one here, to seek the face, to seek to find. Seek me and you will find me. To seek the face. That's a concept that we will be looking at as we go through. Okay, so let's see how the word's used in its normal use. It says that Pharaoh heard of this matter and he bakashed to kill Moshe. He sought to kill him. Okay, this is just the plain meaning of the word. Sought to kill him. Yosef hurried, for his emotions were deeply moved towards his brother. And he bakashed. It doesn't say a place to weep. A place isn't actually there. That's the translators trying to help us out. It says he bakashed to weep. He sought to weep. And went into his room and wept there. He was overcome with his emotions and he sought to weep. That's what he wanted to do, or he desired to weep, you could put it. Do not turn to mediums and do not bakash spiritists to be defiled by them. I am Yehovah your Elohim. Do not seek spiritists. Moshe took his tent and pitched it outside the camp, far from the camp, and called it the tent of witness. And it came to be that everyone who bakashed Yehovah went out to the tent of witness, which was outside the camp. Okay, so now they're bakashing Yehovah. But what is it to bakash him? Okay, we understand to seek Yehovah, but that's not really it. And once we understand the concept fully, then we can bakash Yehovah much more effectively. Deuteronomy 4:25-29 says, when you bring forth children and grandchildren, and shall grow old in the land, and shall do corruptly, and make a carved image in the form of whatever, and shall do what is evil in the eyes of Yehovah your Elohim to provoke him. A lot of what we're going to see as we're going through this is that we do things in the sight of Yehovah. We ask for his panim, which is his face, okay, literally his face, or his presence, and we ask for him to look upon us, and we ask for him to shema, to listen to, make his ear attentive to us. This is kind of what it is to bakash Yehovah's panim. I shall call the heavens and earth to witness against you on that day, that you soon completely perish from the land which you pass over the Jordan to possess. You do not prolong your days in it, but are completely destroyed. And Yehovah shall scatter you among the peoples, and you shall be left few in number among the Gentiles where Yehovah drives you. And there you shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither hear, nor see, nor eat, nor smell. But from there you shall bakash Yehovah your Elohim, and shall find when you derash for him with all your heart, with all your soul. Okay, so in the English it's seek, and when you seek after him. Not what it's saying. We're coming to understand this term bakash. What's this term derash? Because they're different. When you bakash Yehovah, okay, it's a little bit more kind of intimate. What you're actually bakashing is his panim, his presence. When you derash him, okay, it's an inquiry. See, the verb here means to resort to, seek with care, inquire, require. Really, it's an inquiry as to who Yehovah is, or what Yehovah wants in a certain situation, or some specific information from Yehovah. That's what you do when you derash Yehovah. Exodus 18 verse 15, and Moshe said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to derash Elohim. Okay, so this is when he's taking all of the people's queries about the law. They're coming to him to derash Elohim, to specifically inquire of Elohim about a particular matter. And Moshe diligently looked, it says. Okay, actually what it says in the Hebrew is he derashed. Okay, when you get the Hebrew word used twice, it kind of adds intensity to it. Like when Yeshua says, verily, verily, I tell you today. Okay, he derashed, he diligently looked. Guard yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before you, that you do not derash about their gods. Okay, you inquire about their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? So we can derash of Yehovah and see how we're to serve him. What we're doing today, actually, when we're looking at prayer through the scriptures, is we are derashing of Yehovah. Deuteronomy 13, 12 to 14. When you hear someone in one of your cities which Yehovah your Elohim gives you to dwell in, saying, some men, sons of Belial, sons of worthlessness, have gone out of you, of your midst, and led the inhabitants of the city astray, saying, let us go and serve other gods, gods whom you have not known. Then you shall derash, search out and ask diligently. So this is making a specific inquiry. Okay, these men are going to be held to account for what they've done. The accusation against them is serious. You are to derash, search out, and ask diligently whether or not it's true. Deuteronomy 18, 10 to 11 says, let no one be found among you who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or who practices divination, or a user of magic, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. Okay, doesn't really say that. It says derash al mutim. Now, dead is mot. When Yehovah says, you shall surely die, he says, you shall mot tamut. Okay? Mutim, that's the plural of mot, of the dead. So it's the dead. Derash al mutim means to inquire of the dead specifically, not calling up the dead. Although I imagine you have to call up the dead to inquire of them, like Shaul with the witch of Endor. When a malicious witness rises up against any man to accuse him of turning aside, then both men who have the dispute shall stand before Yehovah, before the priests and the judges who serve in those days. And the judges shall diligently search, shall diligently derash, diligently inquire, and see if the witness is a false witness who has falsely accused his brother. Then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. So when we see humans derashing, it's over matters that are very important. Okay, it's kind of like, it carries the connotation of it being diligent to derash. Blessed are those who observe his witnesses, who derash him with all the heart. Okay, so you inquire of him. That's what we're told, isn't it? You will bekash Yehovah, and you will derash of him with all your heart and with all your soul. So it's to inquire of him, to find out who he is and what it is that he wants of us. I have sought, I have derashed you with all my heart. Let me not stray from your commands. And do not take away from my mouth the word of truth entirely, for I have waited for your judgments, that I might guard your Torah continually forever and ever, that I might walk in a broad place, for I have derashed your statutes. Okay, so again, this is a way that you can derash Yehovah, to inquire of him through his word. Okay, you can make a specific inquiry of him through prayer, but this is the way that we do it in the majority. We find out who he is. We make inquiries of him when we find out who he is in his word. I am yours, save me, for I have derashed your statutes. Deliverance is far from the wrong ones, for they have not derashed your statutes or your laws. Derash Yehovah while he is to be found. Call on him while he is near. There was a scarcity of food in the days of David for 3 years, year after year. So we understand what derash is now when that comes up. Let's go back to bekash, because bekash is something very powerful that we can do of Yehovah. And David bekashed the panim of Yehovah. This is actually a great translation for when it says panim most of the time, the ISR version. Okay, a lot of translations don't have anything even close to this. David bekashed the panim of Yehovah. And Yehovah answered because of Shaul and his bloodthirsty house, because he killed the Givonites. Okay, so David bekashed his panim, and we're going to look at what it is to bekash someone's panim. Okay, to seek their presence, to seek their face. And this is what we can do with Yehovah in prayer. Ask him to turn his attention to us, to listen to us. 1 Chronicles 16, 10-11 says, boast in his set-apart name. Let the hearts of those bekashing Yehovah rejoice. Derash Yehovah and his strength through his word. Bekash his panim continually. And King Shlomo was greater than any of the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. Okay, so we can understand from this human example how we are to bekash Yehovah and the sort of things we're looking for. All the earth bekashed the panim of Shlomo to hear his wisdom. So they all sought his face. They all sought his wisdom. This is just a human king. We can bekash the panim of Yehovah in prayer. This is the generation of those who derash him, who inquire of him. Yaakov, who bekash your panim, Selah. Raise a shout for Yehovah, all the earth. So what we're going to find here is something that is integral, okay, something that we must do when we are bekashing the panim of Yehovah. Serve Yehovah with gladness. Come before his panim with singing. Okay, it's an interesting concept. Know that Yehovah, he is Elohim, he has made us. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Give thanks to him, bless his name. All of these are very important things that we'll be breaking down a little bit more. Give thanks to him, bless his name. For Yehovah is good, his kindness is everlasting, and his truth to all generations. Okay, this is how you bless his name, because his name isn't just the pronunciation of the letters that you see. His name is his character. So bless his name with things like this. When you enter into his gates, come with singing. If you don't want to sing out loud, if your voice is terrible like mine, sing in your heart to him, okay? Enter his gates with thanksgiving, though. Bless his name by saying things like this, by acknowledging who he is, acknowledging who you are in his sight, and acknowledging who he is. Yehovah is good, his kindness is everlasting. These are the sort of things that you should be coming to him with, to entreat him. First Chronicles 16, 34 to 36. Give thanks to Yehovah, for he is good. His kindness is everlasting. Okay, again, we've got this thanksgiving here. We've got this blessing of his name. And say, save us, O Elohim, of our deliverance. Gather us together and deliver us from the Gentiles, to give thanks to your set-apart name and boast in your praise. Blessed be Yehovah Elohim from everlasting to everlasting. And all the people said, Amen, and praised Yehovah. Okay, blessed be Yehovah Elohim from everlasting to everlasting. Bless his name. This is what is being done here. All of these concepts, we can just kind of read over them. But when we actually understand what the Hebrew is saying, and we can see that these are part of techniques almost, I don't really like the idea of like making it a methodology, but these are how Yehovah wants to be approached and how the writers of Scripture say to approach him. Psalm 50:23 says, whoever offers thanksgiving glorifies me. That's quite an amazing thing for us to recognize. If we want to glorify Yehovah, give him thanks. Okay, enter his gates with thanksgiving. Bless his name. Speak of who he is when you come to him in prayer. Okay, palal. Palal's another verb, and what it means is to pray, basically. Ignore these, okay? It means to pray. And that's just the general pray that we would think of. When we think of, I pray to Yehovah, this is what this word actually means. But as we've seen, a lot of the time when it says that they offer prayers or whatever, they were offering something very different from just the prayers that we think to make. Numbers 11, verse 2, and the people cried out, they sa'ak. When we looked at Sodom and Gomorrah, it said that their cry reached Yehovah. It was their sa'akah. To cry out is the verb. It's what you do, you cry out. The sa'akah is the name of their cry. Okay? To Moshe, and Moshe palaled to Yehovah, and the fire died down. Okay, we're going to look at when people cry out to Yehovah in a little bit. But they cried out to Moshe, and Moshe palaled on their behalf, and the fire died down. Give ear to my words, ha'azinu. We saw this when we went through the Torah portion, ha'azinu. Okay, it means pretty much exactly what Shema means. Okay, to give ear to give heed to hearken to. That's the word ha'azinu. There's another word as well, which is kashav. And it means pretty much the identical thing, but they're all synonyms. They're all used for the same sort of thing, and you'll see them used interchangeably. Okay, ha'azinu to my words, O Yehovah, consider my meditation. This is what you're asking for when you come and you bakash his panim, you seek his presence. Okay, you want him to put his attention on you. And as we've seen, there's a way to do that. There's a way to approach him, to ask for his attention. Attend to, kashav, the voice of my cry. That could be listen or hearken to. My King and my Elohim, for unto you I palal. O Yehovah, in the morning you shema my voice. I present myself to you in the morning and I look up. Okay, this is someone who is bakashing his panim. And Hannah, rose up, and after eating and drinking in Shiloh, where Eli the priest was on the seat by the doorpost of the Hekel of Yehovah. And she was bitter in soul and palal to Yehovah and wept greatly. Now this is just something I want to draw your attention to at this point. I'm not going to go through it so much. But when people approach Yehovah and people hear his prayers, they are very often broken. They're bitter in spirit. And they're weeping or they're crying out. Okay, he seems to pay particular attention and put his panim, his presence, on those who are distressed. And she made the vow and said, O Yehovah Sebaot, if you would look indeed on the affliction of your female servant and remember me, and not forget your female servant, for him to remember somebody again is for him to put his panim upon them. But shall give to your female servant a male child, and I shall give him to Yehovah all the days of his life, and let no razor come upon his head. And it came to be, as she kept on palaling in the panim of Yehovah, that Eli was watching her mouth. Okay. This word tefillah is a noun, and it means a prayer. So we've got palal, that's the verb, which means to pray. That's what you're doing. Okay, but when you are palaling, what you are doing is you're making a tefillah. Tefillah actually comes from the word palal. That's the verb root. So when you see tefillah, it's a prayer, what we would think of as offering a prayer. And now, O Yehovah, the word which you have spoken concerning your servant and concerning his house, establish it forever and do as you have said. It's another thing I want to draw your attention to, that people, when they pray to Yehovah, they remind him of what he said in his word, and they ask him, they call on his name, so to speak, and ask him to do as he said, to do as he is. And let your name be made great forever, saying, Yehovah Sebaot is the Elohim over Israel. And let the house of your servant David be established before you, panim, before your panim, or in your panim. For you, O Yehovah Sebaot, the Elohim of Israel, have revealed this to your servant, saying, I build you a house. Therefore your servant has taken heart to palal this tefillah to you. Okay, so this is what he's doing. This is the name of what he does. Okay, he makes a tefillah. To you who shamas all tefillah. Okay, all prayer. Now he doesn't act on all prayer, but he does hear it. The word shema doesn't always mean to give heed to or to hearken to. It sometimes just means to listen to. So he hears all tefillah. Depart from me, all you workers of wickedness, for Yehovah has shamad the voice of my weeping. Again, we've got this theme here. Yehovah has heard my pleading. That's what it's translated as in the English, my pleading. And the word there is teichina. Okay, so we've got prayer, tefillah, and we've got this other word, teichina. So let's understand what teichina is. Okay, teichina is a noun, and it means to ask favor, to make a supplication for favor, and it's a noun. And we know whenever we see a noun in Hebrew that we're going to be able to find out what that word is about when we look at the root word, the verb root. And the verb root is chanan. Okay, chanan is the verb. It means to be gracious, to show favor or pity. So a teichina is a request for Yehovah to do this, for him to give grace. Okay, the actual Hebrew word for grace, which is chen, comes from this same verb root, which is chana. Okay, so when we make teichina, just remember we're asking him for grace, or we're asking him for favor. Let my teichina come before you, come before your panim. So we bakash his panim, and when we have his panim, then we can make these, it says prayers here, not prayers, teichina, these requests for grace. Deliver me, again, deliver me according to your word. See the way that these people pray to him, what they're saying to him, and we can now incorporate these things into our own prayers to Yehovah. It could be that they present their teichina before Yehovah in his panim, and they turn back, each one from his evil way. For great is the displeasure and the wrath that Yehovah has spoken against this people. When we are presenting teichina to Yehovah, it has to be accompanied by repentance. But it's amazing to me that if we sin in our lives, generally the way that we respond isn't to come to seek Yehovah's panim and to offer teichina, to request for grace from him. We kind of just arrogantly go about our lives and just think, well, you know, I've sinned and I'm sorry for it, and, you know, that's just the way grace works, isn't it? It's not how they used to do things. If they had sinned against Yehovah, they would come and they would beseech him and ask him for grace specifically. They didn't presume upon his grace. They came and they asked him for grace in that situation. Daniel 9:18-20 says, O my Elohim, incline your ear and shema. Open your eyes and see Ra'eh. Okay, so this is, again, seeking his panim, seeking his presence, his attention on them. and see our wastes in the city which is called by your name. For we do not present our tachanun before you in your panim because of our righteous deeds, but because of your great compassion. So you can see what he's doing here again. He's calling on his name. He's reminding him. He's saying, because of your great compassions, we make our tachanun. Okay, this word is a masculine noun. Okay, techina, a ending, that's feminine. Tachanun, that's masculine, but they mean essentially the same thing. Don't worry about why one's masculine and one's feminine. When you see tachanun, it means to entreat him for grace, specifically for grace. When you see techina, that's also this request for grace before Yehovah. And it comes from this same word chanan, okay, which is to give grace to somebody. Okay, techina from chanan, feminine noun, exactly the same word to all intents and purposes. O Yehovah, Shema. O Yehovah, forgive. You're going to see this word quite a lot when they come to him with these techina. O Yehovah, kashav, and act. Do not delay for your own sake. Again, for the sake of your name, my Elohim. For your city and your people are called by your name. And while I was speaking and palaling and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my techina before Yehovah, before his panim, having bakashed his panim, my Elohim, for the set apart mountain of my Elohim. So when they're presenting techina, it's not just techina for themselves, it's also making techina for other people, requests for grace for other people, which is something, again, which is completely lost to us. Okay, it may happen to be something that we pray for, but the idea of this being an actual part of the practice of prayer is completely lost to us. Proverbs 18 verse 23 says, the poor speaks beseechingly. Okay, it doesn't say that. It says the poor makes tachanun, okay, requests for grace. But the rich answers fiercely. This is talking about in just everyday life. The rich, you know, they're more arrogant. They don't need to condescend to anybody. They've got the wealth, they've got the power. The rich answers fiercely. The poor speaks with tachanun, okay, with requests for grace. I said to Yehovah, you are my El. Hazinu, the voice of my tachanun. Okay, again, not the voice of my prayers, so much is lost. Oh Yehovah, with weeping they shall come with the tachanun. Okay, so when people come before Yehovah, they come and they are broken people before him. The relationship that we have with sin, because we've lost all of this, is completely different. I don't think that it's just something that we always do, that we will come before him and be broken when we are beseeching him for grace in a situation. When we have transgressed covenant with Elohim, that we come with tachanun, with weeping. Yet shall you turn, okay, and the word for turn isn't shuv, it's panah, and it's related to the face, to the panim again. Okay, you'll turn your face, in other words, to the tefillah, to the prayer, when someone palals to make tefillah of your servant and his techina, O Yehovah, my Elohim, to shema, to the cry, and to the tefillah which your servant is palaling before your panim, okay, having sought or bakashed your panim. For your eyes to be open towards this house day and night, toward the place you've said to put your name there, to Shema, to the tefillah which your servant palals towards this place. And you shall give heed, you shall Shema to the tachanun of your servant. You'll listen to and you'll respond to the requests for grace of your servants and of your people Israel when they palal toward this place, and Shema from your dwelling place in the heavens, and Shema and forgive. Okay, so another verb that we need to understand is chla. Okay, chla is a weird one. It means to be or become weak, be or become sick, be or become diseased, be or become grieved, be or become sorry. And this, you know, you can think, oh, that's a normal verb. But the context that it's used in, it's basically to be or become low, to be grieved, to be actually sorry. Okay, because we see it says, but Moshe chalad in the panim of Yehovah. Okay, so he made himself low. He made himself of little account. When he approached Yehovah, he recognized his own weakness. And we can do this when we come before Yehovah, especially if we are presenting teichina or tachanun to him, requests for grace. We make ourselves low before him. Then Shemuel said, what have you done? And Shaul said, because I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered at Michmash. Okay, so this is the account of Solomon when he sacrifices all of the animals that he's been told to destroy. But it's even more insidious what he does. And with this understanding, we can understand more of what he does. So I said, the Philistines are going to come down on me at Gilgal, and I have not chalad the panim of Yehovah. He's saying, I've not made myself low. I've not made myself humble in his sight. So I felt compelled, and I offered the burnt offering. What I was doing, I was trying to make myself low and kind of despised, or grieved, to make myself sorry and low in his sight. Or is that actually what he was doing? We're told elsewhere something completely different. So for him to tell this lie, it makes the situation even worse. And the king answered and said to the man of Elohim, please chalad the panim of Yehovah your Elohim, and palau for me, that my hand might be restored to me. And the man of Elohim chalad the panim of Yehovah. Okay, so what he requests of him is something very, very specific here. He asks for him to make an entreaty for him of a particular type, for him to go and make himself low in the face of Yehovah, which is interesting. 2 Kings 13:4-5. Then Yehoahaz halad the panim of Yehovah, and Yehovah shemad to him, for he saw the oppression of Yisrael, because the king of Aram oppressed them. And Yehovah gave Yisrael a savior, so that they came out from under the hand of Aram, and the children of Yisrael dwelt in their tents as before. Okay, so here, when we are approaching him and we're making entreaties, when we are ataring him and we're entreating him about a particular thing, or we're making teichina, we're making these requests for grace, we make ourselves low. We enter into his courts with thanksgiving, and we make him high. We bless his name. We declare who he is, but we make ourselves low when we come into his presence or into his panim, when we bakash his panim. This is appropriate. And let the king delight in your loveliness, because he is your master. Bow yourself to him. And the daughter of Saul with a gift, the rich among the people, chala your panim. Okay, so it's saying even the rich are brought low in the presence of Yehovah. Daniel 9:13 says, as it is written in the Torah of Moshe, all this evil has come upon us, and we have not chalad the panim of Yehovah. We've not entreated the face of Yehovah. We've not made ourselves low. All of this evil has come upon us. He's turned his face away from us, but we've not brought ourselves low in his presence, to turn back from our crookedness and to study your truth. Okay, this word is a very interesting word, anah, okay, and it's what's known as an interjection. It's not used very commonly in Scripture. I don't really think that people know how to translate it properly. Okay, they've got it, I beseech thee, I pray thee, like, O Yehovah, used 3 times as that. But what it's actually declaring is, I'm going to call on your name. Yehovah, I'm going to call on your name. And we'll see that from the usage. In those days, Chizkiyahu was sick unto death, and Yeshayahu, the prophet, son of Amoz, went to him and said to him, thus said Yehovah, set your house in order, for you're going to die and not live. And he turned his face toward the wall and palal to Yehovah, saying, I pray to you. He says basically, Anah Yehovah. Remember how I have walked before you in your panim, in truth and with a perfect heart, and I've done what was good in your eyes. Because what he's going to ask him after this is as a consequence of him having walked in this way, and because of what Yehovah promises and what his character is. See, in Nehemiah 1, 4-9, it says, "And it came to be when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned for many days, and I was fasting and palaling before in the panim of the Elohim of the heavens. And I said, Anah Yehovah, Elohim of the heavens, O great and awesome El, guarding the covenant and kindness with those who love you and with those guarding your commands." Okay, so he calls on his name. He says, "Oh, great and awesome El," and then he states who he is. He says, "Please let your ear be attentive and your eyes be open to Shema, the Teichina of your servant." Now, his prayer, his request for grace that he's going to make, "which I am palaling before your panim." Before you now, day and night, for the children of Israel, your servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against you, both my father's house and I have sinned. So he comes and he makes this teichina, this request for grace. He prefaces it with this, Anah Yehovah, and then he calls on his name. He tells Yehovah, and he knows who he is. "We have acted very corruptly against you and have not guarded the commands, nor the laws, nor the judgments which you have commanded your servant Moshe. Please remember the word that you commanded your servant Moshe, saying, if you trespass, I shall scatter you among the peoples. But if you shall turn back to me and guard my commands and do them, though you were cast out to the end of the heavens, I shall gather them from there and bring them to the place which I have chosen to make my name dwell there." So we can kind of see all of these elements coalescing in passages like this. Okay, the way that he's approached, the things that are said, how his name is blessed when they enter into it. They're asking him to remember the word that he's spoken, and they're doing it all after having entered into his panim. Psalm 116, 4-6 says, "Then I called on the name of Yehovah." How did he call on the name of Yehovah? He says, "O Yehovah, I Anah you, deliver my soul." Yehovah shows favor and is righteous, and our Elohim is compassionate. Yehovah guards the simple. So what does he do? He calls on his name, says who he is. I Anah, O Yehovah, please save me. I Anah, O Yehovah, please send prosperity. Blessed is he who is coming in the name of Yehovah. We shall bless you from the house of Yehovah. Yehovah is El, and he gave us light. Bind the festal offering with cords to the horns of the altar. You are my El, and I praise you. You are my Elohim, I exalt you. Give thanks to Yehovah, for he is good, for his kindness is everlasting. Again, this is how you enter into his gates, with thanksgiving and by blessing his name. If you want his panim to be on you, and for him to shema to your requests, and for his eyes to be open to you, this is how you go about it. "So I set my face toward Yehovah, my Elohim, to bakash by tefillah and by tachanun," request for grace, "with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And I palal to Yehovah my Elohim and made confession and said, Anah Yehovah, great and awesome El, guarding the covenant and the kindness to those who love him and to those who guard his commands." Okay, so this is how it's done. And we can now take this and put it into the prayers that we make. We can approach him properly and with the proper reverence to him and who he is. And we can call on his name in the proper way. So whose prayers does Elohim hear and answer? Okay, the first part of this question is very easy for us to answer. To you who shemas all prayer, all tefillah. Okay, so he hears all prayer. The important part is whether he's going to answer your prayer. Obvious verse, he who turns away his ear from shemaring the Torah, even as tefillah, is an abomination. Very different thing to turn your ear away from hearing the Torah to not knowing what the Torah says, but still having a heart that is circumcised to Elohim. Okay, it's not about your knowledge of the Torah. It's about whether when you hear the Torah, you turn your ear away from hearing it. Okay, that person's prayer is an abomination. It will be heard by Yehovah, it will be shemad by Yehovah, but it will not be shema in the full sense of heeded. Isaiah 59, 1-2 says, look, the hand of Yehovah has not become too short to save, nor his ear too heavy to shema. But your crookednesses have separated you from your Elohim. Crookedness is the word avon that we looked at. Your iniquity. And your sins have hidden his panim from you and from shemaring. Okay, so you want to bakash his panim. You can't bakash his panim when there's still iniquity in your life, because your crookednesses hide his panim from you. 2 Chronicles 33, 10-13 says, and Yehovah spoke to Manasseh and to his people, but they did not kashav, they didn't hearken, they didn't listen. Therefore Yehovah brought upon them the commanders of the army of the king of Ashur, who captured Manasseh with hooks, bound him with bronze shackles, and made him go to Bavel. And when he was in distress, he chalad the panim of Yehovah's Elohim and humbled himself greatly. He made himself low before Yehovah when he bakashed his panim and palal to him. And he was moved by his atar, by his entreaty. And he heard his techinah, his request for grace, and brought him back to Yerushalayim into his kingdom. And Manasseh knew that Yehovah was Elohim. Psalm 32, 2-6. When I kept silent, my bones became old, through groaning all the day. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My sap was turned into droughts of summer. Selah. Okay? People ever feel like this is how their walk with Yehovah is? And see what comes next. I acknowledged my sin to you, and my crookedness I did not hide my avon. I have said, I confess my transgressions to Yehovah, and you forgave the crookedness of my sin, Selah. What people seem to do, they spend so much time and so much kind of mental energy in not acknowledging their sin, or in trying to twist what they're doing into not really being sin, and try and twist the word around it to fit into place, which is futile. It's just a waste of energy, because if it's not the way that it is, it's not the way that it is. The best thing you can do is submit to it and confess and say, okay, so this is wrong. Just like Manasseh did. Therefore, let every kind one palal to you where you might be found. Even in a flood of great waters, they would not reach him. He who hides his transgressions does not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them finds compassion. I think a lot of people find it very easy to confess that something is wrong before Elohim. Some people will confess something's wrong and then they'll twist it later and be like, oh, it's not really wrong. Okay, but if you confess something's wrong before Elohim, you're putting yourself in a position where you've got to stop doing it. You can't just acknowledge that it's wrong and go, yeah, it's wrong, but I do it anyway, it's fine. Might stop one day. King of all of the universe there, watching all of my actions, okay, listening to my prayers. I confess that this is wrong to him, but forsaking it, not sure that I really want to forsake it. It's quite important to me. Job 33:26. He atars to Elohim. He makes entreaty to Eloah, and he accepts him, and he sees his panim with joy. Okay, he sees Yehovah's panim. He returns man to his righteousness. The whole purpose of the word of Elohim, to return us to righteousness, so that we can see his panim with joy, so that we can seek his panim in our lives, and his attention is upon us. That's what we want, but in order for that, we need to examine our lives, scrutinize our lives, and make sure that everything is in accordance with Yehovah's word. Proverbs 21 verse 13 says, whoever shuts his ear to the cry, to the za'ak of the poor. Saw the word before, za'ak, and it was a verb. It's crying, okay? The cry of the poor, that's a noun. It's a different word. It just sounds similar, so don't be confused. Okay, whoever shuts his ear to the cry of the poor, and that word is dal, which we looked at, which means low, okay? Let him also cry, word is kara, it means to call. Let him also call and not be heard. Well, the word isn't shema, and it's not kashav, and it's not ha'azinu. To be heard there, different connotation, it's the word ana, and it means answered. Okay? So whoever shuts his ear to the cry of the low, of the poor, let him also call out and not be answered. Okay, so again, when we're looking at our life, if we're making prayers and they're not being heeded, we can look at these things and say, am I doing any of these things? Is this my attitude of mind? Genesis 4 verse 10 says, and he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood za'aks out to me from the ground. So that's the verb, cries out. That's what it's doing. Yehovah seems to hear these cries. Moshe and Aharon went out from Pharaoh, and Moshe za'aked out to Yehovah concerning the frogs which he had brought against Pharaoh. And Yehovah did according to the word of Moshe. Okay, so he seems to hear these cries. Exodus 22:21-23 says, do not tread down a sojourner or oppress him. For you are sojourners in the land of Mitzrayim. Do not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you do afflict them at all, if they za'ak out to me at all, I shall certainly shema their za'akah, the noun of za'ak, their za'akah, their cry. So if we turn our ear from the cry of these people, he will not hear our cry when we call out to them, but he will hear their cry if they cry out to him against us. Isaiah 58:1-7 says, cry aloud, do not spare, lift up your voice like a ram's horn. Declare to my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sins. Yet they derash me day by day. Delight to have knowledge of my ways. They inquire of him. Through his word, they inquire of who he is. Okay? They want to have a knowledge of who he is. And this passage, as we're going through it, I want you to think of the Torah movement today. Okay? They inquire of him. They want to know his righteousness. They want to know his right rulings, his judgments. They want to know all this knowledge of him through having derashed him. A nation that did righteousness and did not forsake the judgment of their Elohim. They ask of me rulings of righteousness. They delight in drawing near to Elohim. Okay, these offerings of sacrifices. They delight in all of that. This is all according to his word. You'd think that these people would be in a great position because they've derashed of him. They've inquired of him. They've found out more. They found out what righteousness is in his eyes. And then they've started to walk in all of these things. They say, why have we fasted and you've not seen? Why has your panim not been upon us? Why have we afflicted our souls and you took no note? Again, why has your panim not been upon us? Look, in the day of your fasting, you find pleasure and drive on all your laborers. Look, you fast for strife and contention and to strike with the fist of wrongness. You do not fast as you do this day to make your voice shomad on high. Okay, and it's the same with prayer. Okay, we can have derashed Yehovah. We can inquire of him. We can have found out all these things in this Torah, and we can be doing them all. We can be, we're not going to be offering sacrifices in the temple, but we can be doing whatever. We can be doing the day of his fast, do Yom Kippur, do Sukkot, do all the rest of it. But if our hearts are not correct before him, then he will not hear our voices when we cry out to him. Is it a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head like a bulrush and to spread out sackcloth and ashes? Do you call this a fast and an acceptable day to Yehovah? Is this not the fast that I've chosen? To loosen the tight cords of wrongness, to undo the bands of the yoke, to exempt the oppressed, and to break off every yoke? Is it not to divide your bread with the hungry, that you bring to your house the poor who are cast out? When you see the naked, and cover him, and do not hide yourself from your own flesh. All of that knowledge of him which comes from derashing him, okay, it's worthless unless we're actually applying it according to his heart, because it fulfills a purpose. It does certain things. It's not just like a cold religious system that we do and then we're fine with everything else. 1 Kings 8:27-62. I'm going to read through this passage, and it's going to bring through everything that we've looked at into one passage, or most of the things we've looked at into one passage. And we'll end after we finish this passage. But verse 27 says, for is it true Elohim dwells on the earth? See, the heavens and the heavens of heavens are unable to contain you. How much less this house which I have built? Yet shall you panah to the tefillah, you shall turn your face. Okay, of your servant and his techinah, his appeals for grace. O Yehovah my Elohim, and Shema, to the cry and the tefillah which your servant is palaling before your panim today, or in your panim, in your presence. For your eyes to be open toward this house night and day, toward the place of which you have said, my name is there, to Shema, to the tefillah, which your servant palals towards this place. It doesn't say your servant makes, it says your servant prays, literally. Then you shall Shema the teichina of your servant and of your people, Yisrael, when they palal toward this place, when you Shema in your dwelling place in the heavens, and you shall Shema and forgive. If anyone sins against his neighbor, and he has lifted up an oath on him to cause him to swear, and comes and swears before you, before your altar in this house, then Shema in the heavens, and act and rightly rule your servants, declaring the wrongdoer wrong, bringing his way on his head, and declaring the righteous right by giving him according to his righteousness. We saw before that when a decision was to be made by the judges, in certain cases, the men were to be brought before Yehovah. And this is what this is talking about here. When your people Yisrael are smitten before an enemy, because they have sinned against you, and they shall turn back to you, confess your name, and palal, and make chanan to you in this house. And this is interesting. Chanan was the verb root of te-chila, okay, and tachanun. Okay, it was to ask for Yehovah to chanan, to show favor. But this, it's the verb conjugated in another way, which makes it that it's something that the people are doing. Are the people showing favor? No. And we used pealim.com, P-E-A-L-I-M.com. Okay, and we can see that when the verb is conjugated like this, it means to plead or to ask for mercy. So it's the verb being done in another way. It's the people asking for this verb to be done to them, if you like. And it's hitchanenu, and it means they pled. That's what they're doing. They're not asking, they're not making supplication. That's a little bit weak. Okay, what they're actually doing is they're pleading. And when we come and we make teichila, what we're doing in certain contexts is pleading with Yehovah to you in this house. Then Shema in the heavens, and forgive the sin of your people Yisrael, and bring them back to the land which you gave to their fathers. When the heavens are shut up and there is no rain because they sin against you, when they palal toward this place and confess your name and turn from their sin, because you afflict them. Again, all of these components which are necessary for his panim to be upon us. Then Shema in the heavens, and forgive the sin of your servants, your people Yisrael. For you teach them the good way in which they should walk, and shall give them rain on the land which you have given to your people as an inheritance. When there is scarcity of food in the land, when there is pestilence, blight, mildew, locusts, grasshoppers, when their enemy distresses them in the land of their cities, any plague and any sickness, whatever tefillah, whatever teichina made by any of your people toward this house, each knowing the plague of his own heart. That's a fantastic way of putting it. Each knowing the plague of his own heart, and shall spread out his hands towards this house. This is another interesting thing. Spread out his hands towards this house. When they prayed, they didn't pray like this. And I'm not saying it's bad for us to pray like this, because we are to be low in certain contexts. When we come before Yehovah, we are to make ourselves low in his panim, and maybe that's an expression of that. Okay, but what they would do is they would stretch out their hands when they were praying. Psalm 44:20, if we have forgotten the name of our Elohim, or stretched out our hands to a foreign god. Psalm 5 verse 3, O Yehovah, in the morning you shema my voice. I present myself to you in the morning, and I look up. When I'm praying, I look up. I spread out my hands. That's what they would have done. Spreads out his hands towards this house. Then Shema in the heavens, your dwelling place, and forgive and act and render unto everyone according to all his ways, whose heart you know. Because you alone know the hearts of all the sons of men, so that they fear you all the days that they live in the land which you gave to our fathers. Also, concerning a foreigner who's not of your people Israel, but has come from a far land for your name's sake, since they hear of your great name and your strong hand and your outstretched arm, and he shall come and palal toward this house, Shema in the heavens, your dwelling place, and do according to all for which the foreigner calls to you, so that all the people of the earth know your name too. All of these things, asking Yehovah to do all these things according to his name, according to his word, and for the sake of his name. And know that this house which I have built is called by your name. When your people go out to battle against their enemy in the way that you send them, and they shall palal to Yehovah toward the city which you have chosen, and toward the house which I have built for your name. And this is all very interesting. All of it all the way through is when they do this and they palal towards this city, when they palal towards this house, when they're in the land that they've been scattered into, they're going to palal toward this house. Okay? And it's something that I do when I pray. If I've got the opportunity to, I will pray towards the Holy Land. I will pray towards that city. Okay? It's not Torah though. We're not told to do it in the Torah. It's just something that we see all the way throughout. Then you shall shema in the heavens their tefillah and their techina, and maintain their cause when they come and ask for grace. When they sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin, and you become enraged with them and give them to their enemy, and they take them captive to the land of their enemy, near or far, and they shall turn back unto their heart into the land they have been taken captive, and shall turn and make chenan to you again. They plead with you. When they've been taken to these distant lands, when they plead with you in the land of those who took them captive, saying, we have sinned and acted crookedly, we have committed wrong. And they shall turn back to you with all their heart and all their soul in the land of their enemies who led them away captive, and shall palal to you toward their land which you gave to their fathers, the city which you have chosen, and the house which I have built for your name. Then you shall shema in the heavens, your dwelling place, their tefillah and their techina, and maintain their cause. And forgive your people who have sinned against you, and all their transgressions which they've transgressed against you. And give them compassion before those who took them captive, and they shall have compassion on them. For they are your people and your inheritance, whom you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the iron furnace. Let your eyes be open to the techina of your servant, and the techina of your people Yisrael, to shema to them whenever they kara to you. But again, we're in the land. We've been scattered. We recognize the things that we've done of wrong. But as of yet, we're not doing these things. We're not making techina to him. We're not pleading with him. For you have separated them unto yourself for an inheritance out of all the peoples of the earth, which you spoke by the hand of your servant Moshe, when you brought our fathers out of Mitzrayim, O Master Yehovah. And it came to be when Shlomo had ended praying all this tefillah and techina to Yehovah, that he rose up from before the altar of Yehovah, from kneeling on his knees with his hands spread to the heavens. And he stood and blessed all the assembly of Yisrael with a loud voice, saying, Blessed be Yehovah, who has given rest to his people, Yisrael. Again, blessing his name here, according to all that he promised. Okay, calling on his name, calling on his promises. There has not failed one word of all his good word, which he promised through his servant Moshe. Yehovah, our Elohim, is with us, as he was with our fathers. He does not leave us nor forsake us, to incline our hearts to himself, to walk in his ways and to guard his commands and his laws and his judgments, which he commanded our fathers. And let these words of mine, with which I have made chenan, okay, with which I have pled before Yehovah, before his face, be near Yehovah, our Elohim, day and night, to maintain the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Yisrael, the matter of each day in its day. Okay, so when we are to chala the panim of Yehovah, this will be a way to chala his panim, to come and plead before him, to make techina, so that all the peoples of the earth might know that Yehovah is Elohim, there is no one else. Let your heart therefore be perfect to Yehovah Elohim, to walk in his laws and guard his commands as it is this day. And the king and all Yisrael with him made sacrifices in the panim of Yehovah, in his presence. So we're going to come back in the second part, and we're going to look further at prayer, because the scriptures say so much about prayer, but these are foundational concepts that we need to understand in order to go deeper into it and have a better prayer life with him. Okay, we'll come back soon. Okay, so to recap what we went over in the last part, just to make sure that everybody's got it before we go on to other things. Okay, so there's a number of words that we went over in the last part. I want you to say what they mean so I can see if you've got it. Palal. Pray. Atar. One of the more difficult ones, wasn't in it very much? Which? Can't hear you, sorry. It's entreat. Yeah, kind of. It's to entreat. It's to make a request for somebody or about something. To make a request of Yehovah. Darash. Inquire. Bakash. You have Kash's panim, don't you? Anna. Call on his name. When they say that, what directly follows is they call on his name. Or they say, and I called on his name, and the beginning of it is Anna. Hanan. Grace or favor, to show grace or favor. Or if it's conjugated in a certain way, it can mean to plead for something. Okay, tefillah. Right, prayer. So it's the noun form of the verb palal, to pray. Teichina, to ask for grace. If you ask for grace in a matter, and also the same word tachanun. Tachanun is the masculine. Teichina is the feminine. Panim, face. Pana. Turn your face, okay? So, let's look about when we're to pray. Okay, James 5:13-18 is an interesting piece of scripture to use as a vehicle to introduce certain concepts in the Greek. Okay, it says, is any of you suffering evil? Let him prasuchame. Okay, there is a ch sound in Greek as well. It's called the chai. Prasuchome. Is anyone in good spirits? Let him sing psalms. So what is it to prasuchome? Prasuchome is a verb, and what you should probably think of it as is palal. It's to pray. It's the verb to pray, basically. Comes from this word, pros or pras, and then uchame, which we'll look at. So pras means, in this regard, it's a preposition which means with regard to or pertaining to. Okay, so pras uchame is in regard to the uchame. So we need to understand what this word is, what uchame is. And that's a verb as well. And it says in this that it means pray. But we can see from the usage that we've got in the King James, it's translated as wish 3 times, can wish or I would. Okay, you know, if you say to somebody, I pray that that happens, you're not necessarily saying to them that you go home and pray that it happens. You're saying, I desire that that would happen. I would that that would happen. I wish that would happen. So we can see in the New Testament when the word's used, it says, much or little, I pray to Elohim, or I would to Elohim in some translations, that not only you, but also all who hear me today might become such as I am, except for these chains. Okay, so he's not saying, I literally get down and pray for this thing. He's saying, this is my desire. This is how I would have things be. Okay, and fearing lest we should run aground on rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and were wishing/praying for the day to come. They weren't there going, oh Lord, please make it day, just ahead of time. They were just, that's what their desire was. They wanted it to be the daytime. For I myself could have wished or prayed to be banished or accursed from Messiah for the sake of my brothers. Okay, he's not talking about the act of getting down and praying for that thing. He's talking about the act of desiring it or wishing it to be. And we would pray, or we would wish or desire, or we would to Elohim, that you do no evil at all. Not that we should appear approved, but that you should do what is right, even though we should appear unapproved. For we have no power at all against the truth, but for the truth. For we rejoice when we are weak and you are strong. And this also we wish, pray, desire. We desire for your perfection. So again, he's not saying we pray to Elohim that no one does any evil to you. Maybe they do that as well, but he's expressing that it's his desire. Beloved ones, I wish, desire, pray for you to do well in every way. Again, not an actual prayer, a desire. So, for it to be a pros ucheme, it's in regard to a desire, which is interesting. Because obviously when you are actually going through the act of praying, it is in regard to a desire that you're doing it. But that's what the Greek gets across. Matthew 23:14, we see this verb used. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you eat up widows' houses and for a show make long prayers. Problem, that's not a noun. It's not prayers, it's a verb. And that doesn't say make, it says pray. So literally what it says in the Greek is, and for a show, pray long prayings. Okay? Going forward a little, he fell on his face and prosucheme, saying, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Okay, so let him prosucheme if you're suffering evil. Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the assembly, or the overseers of the assembly is really what the word means. It's not about having elders or deacons or bishops or anything like that. It's the overseers and then the people who act as servants. And let them prosucheme over him, having anointed him with oil in the name of the master. Again, so kind of draws on some of the things that we saw about entering into his panim, requesting his panim on a situation and it being about his name. But let the elders prosucheme over him. And the ucha of the belief shall save the sick, and the master shall raise him up. And if he has committed sins, he shall be forgiven. Now, this is a very, very interesting passage. Because ucha isn't the noun for prayer. It's not to palal what tefillah is. Okay? It's actually different. When we see it in the New Testament, everywhere apart from this once, it means vow. Okay? Ucha. It's a noun. Is it a prayer to God? That's sometimes how it's used in the Bible, which is all this is. It's not a definition of it. But most commonly, it's a vow. Acts 18:18 says, and Shaul, having stayed several days more, having taken leave of the brothers, was sailing for Syria, and Priscilla and Aquilus were with him, having shaved his hair at Cenchrea, for he had taken a vow. Okay, he hadn't taken a prayer, he'd taken the Nazirite vow, so he shaves his head. Acts 21:23, so do this, what we say to you, for we have 4 men who have taken an ucha. Okay, again, they were the people who had taken the Nazirite vow. Jeremiah 11:15, if we look at the Septuagint, look when this word is used in the Septuagint. Why has my beloved wrought abomination in my house? Will vows, ucha, and holy offerings take away thy wickedness from thee? Okay, prayers, it could fit in there, and you can see why people have translated it as prayer. But really, it's a vow. Most commonly, it's a vow anyway. I'm not saying it can never mean prayer because I don't know enough about Greek and the sources. But most commonly, it means vow. Okay, 1 Samuel 2, verse 9, granting his petition to him that makes vows. Is it prayers? It could be. This is one of the examples where prayer would suggest itself as more likely. But again, most commonly it's vow. So in the Strong's, the New Testament, this is what it says. I think this is actually from the Thayer's Greek lexicon. Okay, a prayer to God, only in James 5:15, and a vow, often so in the Septuagint, most often, almost always, every time it says vow, making a vow, this is what you do. In the case of vows in the Torah, it's always this ucha. And that would change the meaning, wouldn't it, of James? Okay? The ucha of the belief shall save the sick, and the master shall raise him up. And if he has committed sins, he shall be forgiven. That's a strange thing to say of someone who's sick, and you pray for them because they're sick. Oh, if you pray for someone who's sick, then their sins will be forgiven. It's not a strange thing if it says the vow of the belief, whether it's of the elders having vowed belief or of the person. I don't really know what this is saying. What I'm doing is I'm pointing out to you that it's quite weird that this word is used here, and also that we miss so much when we read it in the English as to what is actually going on behind that. Confess your trespasses to one another and uchame for one another, so that you are healed. The earnest, the energeo prayer or deesis of a righteous one accomplishes much. Okay, so there's quite a lot going on here, isn't there? Okay, the uchame. If you remember what the uchame was, it's a desire. Pras uchame, in regard to a desire, that's when you pray. So when it says uchame for one another, it's desire for one another. It's what you actually desire towards one another. And what we're going to see in other verses is that your attitude towards the brothers is actually important when it comes to prayer. Okay, so what's a deesis? Because that's going to be quite important, isn't it? The energeo deesis of a righteous one accomplishes much. So deesis, a seeking, asking, entreaty to God or to man. Okay, when we see it used in the Septuagint, it's used in the place of teichila in a lot of cases. Okay, but that's not kind of what it means. A seeking, asking, entreaty, or an entreaty to God or to man. And it's a noun. When we see nouns, we think, great. Okay, it's a noun, so we're going to be able to learn something about what it does, because we look at the verb root, which is deomai. And deomai means to want, lack, or to desire, or long for, to ask, or to beg for something. So the earnest deesis, okay, which is quite different, isn't it, to a fervent prayer. Okay, the energeo deesis of a righteous man avails much. If you are pleading with the Lord for somebody, then that avails much. 1 Kings 8:28, and you should look also upon my prosucha. Okay, it's the verb. The noun. Upon my supplication, my deesis, O Lord God of Israel, to hear the deesis and the prosucha, which your servant prosuchamai before you, to you today. Okay, so the prosucha, as I said, that's the noun. So when you think tefillah is the noun version of palal, prosucha is the noun version of prosuchamai. These things are just important so that we can understand what's actually being said in these passages as we go through. So the verb root of it is prosuchamai. Luke 1:8-13 says, and it came to be that while he was serving as priest before Elohim in the order of his division, this is Zechariah, according to the institute of the priesthood, he was chosen by lot to burn incense when he went into the dwelling place of Yehovah. And the entire crowd of people was prosuchamai outside at the hour of incense. And an angel of Yehovah appeared to him, standing on the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your deesis is isakuo. Okay, heard. We've got heard in the English. So his supplication of the Lord, his entreaty to the Lord, him going before the Lord and begging before him, has been isakuo. Does that just mean that he hears it? You know, like we can shema, but don't fully shema as in pay heed to. Isakuo is a good word when we see that. Okay, it's to give heed to, comply with admonition, to obey, to listen to assent to a request, to be heard or have a request granted, depending on how it's used. To hear something is just to akuo, where we get acoustics from. Okay, that's to akuo something. To isakuo is to hear it and do it. Matthew 6:7 says, and when praying, do not keep on babbling like the Gentiles, for they think they shall be isakuo for their many words. They think Yehovah is going to heed to what they say because they keep on babbling. Acts 10:30-31, and Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour, and at the 9th hour I prosucheme in my house, and see, a man stood before me in shining garments, and said, Cornelius, your prosucha has been isakuo, and your kind deeds were remembered before Elohim. Okay, so it's been heard, it's been paid attention to. Romans 10:1, truly my brothers, my heart's desire and deesis to Elohim for Israel is deliverance. We'll go back to deesis to see when this is used, understanding what akuo or isakuo is. Philippians 1:3-4 says, I thank my Elohim in all my remembrance of you, in all my deesis for all of you. I always deesis with joy, which is a strange concept, isn't it? But again, when we just read this, we think, oh, he's just saying a prayer. But there's more emphasis on what's actually happening in the Greek. 1 Peter 3:8-12 says, to sum up, let all of you be like-minded, sympathetic, loving as brothers, compassionate, friendly, not returning evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you were called to this in order to inherit a blessing. For he who wishes to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. Because the eyes of Yehovah, okay, part of his panim, to be in his presence, his ears open and his eyes open. Because the eyes of Yehovah are on the righteous and his ears are open to their deesis. But the prosopon of Yehovah, his panim, is against those who do evil. So again, we get more information about what it is to come into the panim. When we bakash his panim, we need to make sure that we've got these things going on, because otherwise he may turn his panim away. So back to James 5, this is what it says. It says, Eliyahu was a man with feelings like us, a man of passions. And he, prosucheme, earnestly, actually says that he prosuchemed prosucha, he prayed prayers, that it would not rain. And it did not rain on the land for 3 years and 6 months. Okay, so the righteous deesis, well, the deesis of a righteous man avails much. Look, this is what happened with Eliyahu, with Elijah. And he, prosucheme, again, and the heavens gave rain, and the land brought forth much fruit. So it's kind of like take encouragement in this. If you're righteous and you're doing these things, then the prayers that you make are powerful. 2 Thessalonians 3:1-2 says, for the rest, brothers, prosucheme for us, so that the word of Yehovah spreads rapidly and be praised, as also with you, and that we might be delivered from unreasonable and wicked men, for not all have belief. Okay, so if we want to know how and when we should pray, we can look at how and when people are told to pray in Scripture, or when people did pray. So Paul tells them, okay, prosucheme for us, so that the word of Yehovah spreads rapidly and is praised, and also that we're delivered from unreasonable and wicked men, because not all are believers. Colossians 1:9-12 says, that is also why we, from the day we heard, have not ceased prosucheme for you. And again, it doesn't mean that literally from that moment until then, they haven't stopped praying. But what it means is, don't stop praying. Okay, whenever you're going to pray, don't stop. Yeshua gives a parable to his disciples to show them the power of continual prayer. And asking that you be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, to walk worthily of the master, pleasing all, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of Elohim. So we've not ceased prosucheme for you, asking that you be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you walk worthily of the master, you please all, that you bear fruit in every good work, and that you increase in the knowledge of Elohim. Good things to pray for people. If anyone wants to pray for me for these things, be very appreciative. Being empowered with all power according to the might of his esteem, for all endurance and patience with joy. Giving thanks to the Father who has made us fit to share in the inheritance of the set apart ones in the light. So they had knowledge. Okay, you come, you seek his panim. you give him thanks at the same time. Ephesians 6:18-19, prosuchomai at all times, with all prosucha and deesis in the Spirit, watching in all perseverance and deesis for all the set-apart ones. Okay, so if this is an entreaty to Yah, often used of the teichilah, okay, the requests for grace, it's saying, make requests for grace for all the set-apart ones. Also for me, that a word might be given to me in the opening of my mouth, to be bold in making known the secret of the good news. So again, you want examples of how and when to pray, what to pray for. These are all good things to pray for. 2 Thessalonians 1 verse 11, to this end we always prosuchomai for you, that our Elohim will count you worthy of this calling, and complete all the good pleasure of goodness and the work of belief with power. Do not worry at all. Okay, this is what prayer is supposed to achieve. Don't worry about anything. If you are prone to worrying about something, this is what you need to do. In every matter, by prosucha, by prayer and petition, deesis, with thanksgiving again, let your requests, your etema, be known to Elohim. Etema is from the word that we'll see here. Okay, let him ask eteo. Okay, so etema is basically askings. Okay, don't worry. In every matter, offer prayers, offer petitions with thanksgiving, and let your askings be known to Elohim. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him eteo of Elohim, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it shall be given to him. Now, the idea that what we see in Scripture of, do this and it will be given to you. Ask this and it will be given to you. It's all subject to a number of caveats, which we'll be looking at. Okay, but if any of you lacks wisdom over something, let him ask of Elohim. But he should eteo in belief, not doubting. But he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. So when you ask for something, then you are not to doubt. But the cause of doubt, and we'll see this through other scriptures, the cause of doubt that's in you might not be doubting that he's able to do it. It might be doubting your standing before him. And if you doubt your standing before him, then you're double-minded. Because you shouldn't be doubting your standing before him, because you should be walking in such a way that you know what your standing is before him. Well, it's a concept that I'll get into a little bit deeper. For that man should not think that he shall receive whatever from the master. So if you ask and it's not in faith and you doubt, you're not going to get it. Whatever the cause of the doubting is, whether it's just because you haven't got the faith. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. Now, this is an important topic. Okay, this is something that is just massively, massively neglected. You see in Nehemiah 1 verse 4, to give you some examples of the times it was done and that it was important. It came to be when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned for many days, and I was fasting and palaling before the Elohim of the heavens. Okay? Daniel as well. Daniel, who hadn't done anything wrong. Okay, or had done relatively little wrong, when he went and made teichina for other people before Yehovah, he set my face toward Yehovah the Elohim, to seek by tefillah and tachanun, with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. We don't tend to humble ourselves in this way. We don't tend to make ourselves low before his face in this way. Fasting achieves so much. Okay, if you fast, what you're doing is you're taking your comforts of the physical world and you're putting them to the side, and it shows your belief in Elohim, and it also shows your seriousness, and it shows that you are making yourself low in his sight when you come before him. You can come before him and glorify his name. You can come before him in all the other ways, and that's great. But we need to be doing this as well. We need to be humbling ourselves, because this was such a huge, huge part of their walk. Acts 10:30-31, Cornelius said, 4 days ago, I was fasting until this hour, and at the 9th hour, I prosuchomai in my house. And see, a man stood before me in shining garments and said, Cornelius, your prosucha has been heard, Isakuo. and your kind deeds were remembered before Elohim. Okay, so we see that fasting is a way to make our voice heard in other scriptures. Right? This is an interesting element of it. He was fasting, and it says, your kind deeds were remembered, menomai, before Elohim. And we see this word in a scripture that we read elsewhere. Okay, we read this in the Hebrew, or translated from the Hebrew. 2 Kings 21-3. It was in those days, Ezekiel, it's actually Hezekiah, sick even to death. And the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos, come into him and said, thus saith the Lord, give charge to thy household, for thou shalt die and not live. And Hezekiah turned to the wall and prosuchame to the Lord, saying, Lord, menomai, I pray thee, remember how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart. So Cornelius' deeds and how he'd walked before Yehovah was remembered. But this is an element of calling on his name. Okay, you can come before him boldly if your heart does not condemn you, as the scripture says that we'll look at. But we come before him and we ask him to remember our deeds. We're back to fasting. Okay, and they said to him, why did the disciples of Yochanan fast often and make deisis? Okay, ask yourself, do you fast often? Do you even make deisis? Do you make teichilah? Do you make these requests for grace? Or when you do something wrong, you just presume that the Lord's going to just forgive you because that's kind of what he does, what he's about. Okay, think of the attitude of mind with which we actually approach the panim of Yehovah. Do we make ourselves low? Do we make these requests for grace? Okay, the disciples of Yochanan fast often and make these deisis. And Yeshua says, my disciples are going to do this after I've gone. Are his disciples doing that? Just something that we need to incorporate into what we're doing. As we learn more about who Yehovah is, we won't beat ourselves up about the things that we've not been doing if we weren't aware of them. But these things are... will be of great benefit to us when we're approaching him and we're asking him things. Acts 14 verse 23 says, and having appointed elders in every assembly, and having prosuchame with fasting, they committed them to the master in whom they believed. Okay, so they came before him and they were asking this of him. So they prayed, but they also accompanied it with fasting. 1 Corinthians 7 verse 5, do not deprive one another except with agreement for a time. So it's talking about marital relations. To give yourselves to fasting and prayer. Okay, so we can actually see from this that fasting isn't always of food. Okay, when we're to fast, the day of his fast, to afflict our souls. We can fast of many things. There are people who can't fast of food for many different reasons. So you might say, well, fasting's not for me. But we can fast of the things in the world which bring us pleasure. Mark 9:28-29 says, and when he came into a house, his disciples asked him separately, why were we unable to cast him out? And he said to them, it is impossible for this kind to come out except through pasucha and fasting. Okay, so what this actually means and what Yeshua meant by this is kind of lost to us. However, what we can take from it is that there are some situations in which prayer and fasting are going to be required. And it's never a bad thing to humble yourself so that your voice is heard, so that you enter in before his panim. Deuteronomy 9:18-20 says, and I fell down before Yehovah as at the first 40 days and 40 nights. I did not eat bread and I did not drink water because of all your sins which you had committed in doing evil in the eyes of Yehovah to provoke him. For I was afraid of the displeasure and rage with which Yehovah was wroth with you to destroy you. But Yehovah shemad to me that time once more. And Yehovah was very enraged with Aharon to destroy him. So I palal for Aharon at that time also. We saw when we were going through the Hebrew, you can palal, a techina, a request for grace for somebody else. Well, this is what Moses is doing, okay? Think about the attitude of mind that we have in our lives and the things that we ask for. Moses fasted for 40 days and 40 nights just in a request for grace for other people. It's quite amazing. So we'll get on to this. Now, Yeshua taught a lot about prayer. And he didn't just teach with the things that he said. He taught with the things that he did as well. Hebrews 5:5-9 is quite a fascinating passage. It says, so also the Messiah did not extol himself to become high priest, but it was he who said to him, you are my son, today I have brought you forth. He also says in another place, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek, who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up deises and petitions with strong cryings, and this word petitions only appears once in the Greek, and what it kind of is, what it's a picture of, is going forth with an olive branch and asking for mercy or asking for grace. So he'd offered up deises with strong crying and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and was heard because of his reverent fear. Though being a son, he learned obedience by what he suffered. And people will say, well, come on, if this was the word of Elohim made flesh, what does it mean that he learned obedience? Surely he was obedient, and he had to have been obedient from the day of his birth anyway for him to be that perfect sacrifice. But to learn obedience is a very interesting concept. Having been perfected, he became the causer of everlasting deliverance or everlasting salvation or eternal life to all those obeying him. So this is the word for learned. Okay, it's manthano. It means to increase one's knowledge, to increase in knowledge, to hear or be informed, to learn by use and practice, to be in the habit of or accustomed to. So what it's saying of Yeshua is, obviously he knew what obedience was. Nobody had to teach him about obedience. But by actually being obedient in those things, he learned what obedience was through the actual practical application of it, through experiencing those things. Just like when we're tested by Yehovah, we learn through that. We know that we're going to be obedient. Yehovah knows that we're going to be obedient, but we learn obedience in the same way. We experience obedience. It's real to us. When you pursuchame, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pursuchame, standing in the congregations and on the corners of the streets, to be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. And so Yeshua's problem with the scribes and the Pharisees, and they were going about with long flowing tzitzit and all of the rest of it. The problem wasn't that they were wearing tzitzit, and his problem isn't praying in public. His problem is doing it to be seen by men. It's about the motivation behind it. If you pray in public and you're sincerely praying to Yehovah, then that's brilliant. But if you're praying to be seen by men, that's not so good. We'll look at Yeshua and praying in public in a different circumstance in a little bit. But for now, to be seen by men was the problem. But you, when you pursuchame, go into your room, and having shut the door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret shall reward you openly. So the one that you need to be praying to be seen by is not of people. Okay, if when you pray, you're going to be self-conscious and you know that actually what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up praying to the people around you, pray inside. That's what I do very often. Okay, if there's some kind of public prayer and I'm thinking, I'm going to be aware of the fact that people are around me and it's just therefore not going to be as genuine as it could have been, I'll just pray to myself. Pray to Yehovah within myself, rather. And when pursuchame, do not keep babbling like the Gentiles, for they think they shall be aisikuo for their many words. Therefore, do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. And this is interesting, this whole idea of learning something by the practice of doing it and truly then learning it because you have practical experience of it. Your Father knows what you need before you ask him, but there is something to prayer which, when you do it, achieves something. When you actually bring yourself low before Elohim, when you sing to him, when you call upon his name and you say what his name is, you've got to bring all these things into your mind. There's something that it achieves. Your Father, obviously, he knows what you need before you even ask him, but that's not a reason to not pray. This then is the way that you should pursuchame. Our Father who is in the heavens, let your name be set apart. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Do not lead us into trial, but deliver us from the wicked one. Because yours is the kingdom and the power and the esteem forever. Amen. Deliver us from Hasatan. Deliver us from temptation. Don't lead us into trial with the trier, with the tempter, Hasatan. Why? Because his is the kingdom. It's up to him whether or not the trier is going to come and he's going to tempt us. All things are under his power. So we're asking him to deliver us from temptation because it's his kingdom. But if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father shall also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither shall your Father forgive your trespasses. And neither, as it turns out from the other scriptures that we've read, will he hear your prayers if you do not have this in mind when you approach him. Yeshua says to make sure that you've forgiven other people. And he goes on further than that. He says in Matthew 5:44, he says, but I say to you, love your enemies, bless those cursing you, do good to those hating you, and prosuchame for those insulting you and persecuting you. And again, these are difficult things to do. Especially difficult if you bear in mind that prosuchame means in regard to a desire. Desire that desire the things that you're praying for them. Okay, for those insulting you and persecuting you. Luke 3:21 says, and it came to be when all the people were immersed, Yeshua also being immersed, and prosuchame, the heaven was opened. I find this interesting. Okay, when Yeshua was baptized, he was praying. No idea what he was praying. When we baptize people, we always give them an opportunity beforehand to say whatever they want to say to Yehovah. I'd love to know what Yeshua was saying. Maybe one day I'll get to ask him. Mark 6:44-46 says, now those who ate the loaves were about 5,000 men. Immediately he made his disciples enter into the boat and to go before him to the other side to Bethsaida while he was dismissing the crowd. What I want you to notice here, it says that there were loads of them. Okay, and it draws attention to the fact that there was a crowd there. Didn't have to say that he was dismissing the crowd, but it does say that there was a crowd there. Having sent them away, he went away to the mountain to prosuchame. And we see this so often with Yeshua, okay, that he is in the presence of loads of people. He's teaching all of these people and they're coming to him to be healed. But then afterwards, he goes off and he's alone and he prays. Luke 6:12 says, and in those days it came to be that he went out to the mountain to pray, to prosuchame, and was spending the night in prosucha to Elohim. And we were talking about this in the break. The fact that Yeshua prayed all night. I was saying, it's very, very rare that I would ever spend more than 5 or 10 minutes in prayer. But actually, having studied this out and studied what prayer really is, prayer takes a lot longer than you would appreciate. And you know, the fact that you're to make supplications for him to grant grace to other people and all sorts of stuff, I can see how he could have been up on the mountain praying all night. Mark 1:35 says, and having risen very early in the morning while still dark, he went out and went away to a lonely place, and there he prosuchame. Luke 5:15-16, and the news about him was spreading even more. Large crowds were coming together to hear and to be healed by him of their sicknesses. And he was often withdrawing himself to lonely places and prosuchame. Now I can definitely relate to the idea of, oh, there were large crowds there, so he drew himself off to a lonely place. Okay, I can relate to that. Well, he went off and he prayed. It seems to me, I don't know whether this is the case, but it seems to me that it was always on his mind to be in constant communication with his Father. Whatever was going on, you know, he was often withdrawing and he would pray to his Father about just, I don't know, presume the things that were going on. Whatever it was, he was praying. He was doing it often throughout the day. Matthew 26:36-44 says, then Yeshua came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, sit here while I go over there and prosuchame. And he took with him Kepha and 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be grieved and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, my soul is exceedingly grieved even to death. Stay here and watch with me. And going forward a little, he fell on his face and prosuchame, saying, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples and found them asleep and said to Kepha, "So are you not able to watch with me 1 hour? Watch and prosuchame, lest you enter into trial." Again, the same thing that he'd advised them. Pray so that you don't enter into temptation or trial. The spirit is indeed eager, but the flesh is weak. And he went away a second time and prayed, prosuchame, saying, "O my Father, if it is impossible for this to pass unless I drink it, let your will be done." And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them, went away again, and prayed the third time, saying the same words. I find this fascinating. Okay, in this short period of time, however long it was, he went away 3 times to pray essentially the same thing to his Father. And Yeshua is our example of how we're to do things. Luke 11, 1-13 says, "And it came to be while he was prosuchame in a certain place, as he ceased, one of his disciples said to him, 'Master, teach us to prosuchame, as Yochanan also taught his disciples.' And he said to them, 'When you prosuchame, say, Our Father in the heavens, let your name be set apart, let your kingdom come, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us day by day our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, for we also forgive everyone who is indebted to us. And do not lead us into trial, but rescue us from the wicked one.' And he said to them, 'Which of you shall have a friend and go to him at midnight and say to him, Friend, lend me 3 loaves? Since a friend of mine has come to me on this journey, and I do not have food to set before him. Then the one inside answering says, Do not trouble me, the door is already locked, and my children with me are in bed. I'm unable to get up and give to you. I say to you, if he does not get up and give to him because he is his friend, he shall get up and give him as many as he needs because of his persistence." So what Yeshua teaches through these parables is that persistence in prayer is important. Now, this person is a wicked person, okay? And he says he will get up because of his persistence. He's not saying that Yeshua, the Father in heaven, is like a wicked person who you need to badger all the time. He's not saying that. He's drawing a distinction and saying, look, if this person being wicked will do this thing, how much more will your Father in heaven do it? And I say to you, ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened to you. For everyone asking receives, and he who is seeking finds, and to him who is knocking it shall be opened. And as I say, these exist within certain caveats, which we'll look at. And what father among you whose son asks for bread shall give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, shall give him a snake instead of a fish? Or if he asks for an egg, shall give him a scorpion? If you then, being wicked, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more shall your Father from heaven give the set-apart Spirit to those asking him? So he's always in these things, he's drawing the distinction between us as mortals, as people who are inherently wicked to at least some degree. He's saying, if you would do this, how much more will your Father do this? Okay, if you're in bed and someone comes and they're persistent and you'll get out of bed, how much more will your Father do it through persistent prayer? And we see Yeshua praying persistently. He spoke a parable to them that they should always pray and not lose heart. Okay, so he's talking about persistence of prayer here, as we'll see. Saying, in a certain city there was a certain judge, not fearing Elohim nor regarding man. And a widow was in that city, and she came to him, saying, do right to me on my adversary. And he would not for a while. But afterward he said within himself, even if I do not fear Elohim nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I shall do right to her, lest by her continual coming she wears me out. And the master said, hear what the unrighteous judge said. Okay, if the unrighteous judge does this, how much more will your Father in heaven do it? And shall Elohim not do right by all means to his chosen ones who are crying out day and night to him and being patient over them? Of course he will. But what he was trying to teach them from that, it tells us right there in the text, is to always pray day and night. I say to you that he shall do right to them speedily. But when the Son of Adam comes, shall he find the belief on the earth? Okay, so persistence in prayer. Yeshua shows us persistence in prayer. And he gives us 3 different parables there that show us that we are to be persistent when we petition Yehovah for things. Luke 22:31-32 says, and the master said, Shimon, Shimon, see, Hasatan has asked for you to sift you as wheat. Okay, just like he did with Job. Okay, he says, Hasatan's asked that he could have you to sift you as wheat. But I have deomai. Okay, remember the word deosis, to make supplication. And deomai means to plead or to beg. Yeshua says, I have deomai for you that your belief should not fail. And when you have turned, strengthen your brothers. John 11, we see something interesting. We were looking before at praying in public, and that you're not to pray to be seen of men, rather to be seen of Elohim. We've got this happening. It says, Yeshua wept. The Yehudim therefore said, see how he loved him. And some of them said, was this one who opened the eyes of the blind not also able to prevent this one from dying? Yeshua therefore, again, groaning in himself, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave and a stone laying against it. Yeshua said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who had died, said to him, Master, already he smells, for it is 4 days. Yeshua said to her, did I not say to you that if you believe, you shall see the esteem of Elohim? So they took away the stone where the dead man was laid. And Yeshua lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. And I know that you always hear me, akuo me. But because of the crowd standing by, I said this, in order that they believe that you sent me. So we've got Yeshua here, and he's praying in public, and he's praying for a particular reason. He's not praying, though, to be seen by men, for men to think that he's brilliant, but he has a specific purpose in the things that he says in front of people, having a specific effect on them, and specifically in this case, to increase their faith. Mark 11:21-26, then Kepha, remembering, said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree which you cursed is withered. And Yeshua answering said to them, have belief in Elohim. For I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says shall be done, he shall have whatever he says. Okay, so how is it that we believe in our heart that whatever we ask shall be done? How is it that you get to that point? Because of this, I say to you, whatever you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you shall have them. Whenever you stand for suchmeng, if you hold whatever against anyone, forgive, so that your Father in the heavens shall also forgive you your trespasses. So this is really important. When you're praying for yourself, make sure that you've forgiven others. This comes up in several different passages. But if you do not forgive, neither shall your Father in the heavens forgive your trespasses. It always comes up in the context of how you are to pray as well. James 4:1-10 says, where do fightings and strivings come from among you? Do they not come from your pleasures that battle in your members and your flesh? You desire and do not have. You murder and are jealous and are unable to obtain. You strive and fight, and you do not possess because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask evilly in order to spend it on your pleasures. Okay? Again, we see the motivation of what is being prayed for being incredibly important. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim? That's said in the context of this. You're asking for things to spend them on your pleasures. Okay? That's being a friend of the world. Whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of Elohim. Or do you think that the scripture speaks to no purpose? Does the Spirit which dwells in us intensely crave unto envy? But he gives greater favor. Because of this, he says, Elohim resists the proud. He gives favor to the humble. So then, subject yourselves to Elohim. All of this is said in the context of prayer. Resist the devil and he shall flee from you. Draw near to Elohim and he shall draw near to you in response to your prayer. Cleanse hands, sinners, and cleanse the heart, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to dejection. It's not saying never laugh or be joyful. It's saying, look, you're asking for these things to spend them on your pleasures. These are the things you're taking pleasure in. All of these things, your laughter and the joy that you've got from that. Let that be turned to mourning and your joy to dejection when you realize that these things are not of Elohim. Humble yourself in the sight of the Master, and he shall lift you up. Okay, to achla his panim. Again. John 15, 7-8 says, if you stay in me, and my words stay in you, you shall ask whatever you wish, and it shall be done for you. In this, my Father is esteemed, that you bear much fruit. The motivation for asking isn't to spend them on your passions or on your pleasures. The motivation for asking for things is that his will be done. And you shall be my disciples. Okay, people pray and they wonder why their prayers aren't being answered. But then they look at their life and they think, well, I've not got this right, and I've not got that right. But Yeshua only says, if you stay in me and my words stay in you, you shall ask whatever you wish and it shall be done for you. 1 John 3, 21-22, beloved ones, if our heart does not condemn us, we have boldness toward Elohim. And whatever we ask, we receive from him, because we guard his commands and do what is pleasing in his sight in all aspects. Okay, remember again, like Yom Kippur, where he was like, is this an acceptable fast? You want to fast like this to be heard on high? Okay, in all aspects. And of course, we can't have boldness towards him if our heart is condemning us, the heart where our conscience is condemning us. 1 John 5:13-14, I have written this to you who believe in the name of the Son of Elohim, so that you know that you possess everlasting life, and so that you believe in the name of the Son of Elohim. This is the boldness that we have in him, that if we ask whatever according to his will, he hears us. Exactly the same as what it's been saying here. If our heart does not condemn us, then we have boldness towards Elohim. We have boldness. This is the boldness that we have if we ask whatever according to his will. He hears us. Luke 21:34-36. Take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down by gluttony and drunkenness and worries of this life, and that day come on you suddenly. Okay, so you ask to spend it on your passions. Okay, your heart's not in the right place with this. And this verse is so valuable to us, because this is the verse where Yeshua says, pray that you're worthy to escape the things that are going to happen on the earth. Okay, but when we understand the language that we've looked through in this part, we'll see new meaning to this. It says, for it shall come as a snare on all those dwelling on the face of all the earth. Stay awake then at all times and pray that you be counted worthy to escape all this that is about to take place and to stand before the Son of Adam. But it doesn't say pray. It doesn't say pasuchame, that this is going to happen. It's not offer a prayer. Oh yes, Lord, I'd like for this not to happen to me. It says diomai, beg that you will be counted worthy to escape all the things that are about to come on the earth.